My dear brothers and sisters, or much better to call you younger brothers and sisters because I'm talking to you youth. And I thank Father Chetan for giving me this privilege to talk to you during this seminar. When Percival called me and asked me, can you speak to our youth for about half an hour? I said, surely I can do it because you are our future. And the topic that I have been given, Inculcating Fraternity in Young People towards the marginalized and the vulnerable, I think is one of the most important topics for us today. But how do you inculcate fraternity into someone? What is fraternity? The papal document, Fratelli Tutti, which means we are all brothers and sisters, of course, gives us a far, far vision of what fraternity means. A fraternity that knows no boundaries, a fraternity that comes from the depth of our hearts, a fraternity that is full of compassion, a fraternity that means friendship, that means love, that means service. Let me go back to the Bible. You remember that beautiful story, rather tragic but still beautiful, of Cain and Abel, two brothers from the same mother's womb. The Bible does not tell us exactly what happens, but both of them bring their gifts to the Lord. And for some strange reason, unexplainable, God is pleased with Abel's gift, but is not pleased with Cain's gift. Now the matter should have ended there. They were both brothers. What's the big problem? One person's is acceptable, the other's is not. The next time perhaps Cain had a chance. But Cain kills his brother. When he kills his brother, God asks him, where is your brother? And Cain's reply is, am I my brother's keeper? Now that is where we have to go back to understand the meaning of fraternity. Who is my brother's keeper? Or am I my brother's keeper? Have I got something to do with my brother? And then we know Cain is allowed to, or rather is made to go all around the world without anybody being able to touch him or kill him. But that's not the point of our discussion. The point of our discussion is, am I my brother's keeper? What have I got to do with my brother? And that's where I think fraternity comes. You know, the French Revolution had this famous liberty, equality, fraternity. The three of them, they wanted to put together and take the world ahead. But coming back to being a brother's keeper, but who is my brother? And that brings us to the beautiful story of the Good Samaritan. Remember the story of the man coming down from Jerusalem to Jericho. And he is beaten up by thieves, left to die along the roadside. And the best profession, the priest and the scribe, refused to have anything to do with him. Who takes care of him? Is the Samaritan. A man who would not have been acceptable within the Jewish society. And Jesus, a Jew, gives his example as the one who looks after his brother. that same fraternity that crosses all boundaries, about which Jesus tells us. You go back to the Bible, and there again we have other examples. You have the fraternity of the elder brother and the younger brother in the story of the prodigal son, where the prodigal son, the younger one, has almost ruined everything that belonged to his father, which was given to him as a share. And then he comes back, vulnerable, tired, having fought with the pigs for their own food, if you remember. And when he comes back, the elder brother, who should have been showing brotherhood to him, who should have been showing compassion to him, refuses to come into the house till his father pacifies him. And the Bible doesn't tell us whether he ever came back into the house to join the feast. So this word fraternity, this word being brothers and sisters, while being very idealistic, in the real world does have its real problems. I take you back to another biblical story, the story of Joseph and his brothers. Another story that tells you about brotherhood. And in this brotherhood, what happens? Joseph dreams. Dreams that come from God. Dreams that are high. But already there was some sort of jealousy that the brothers had about Joseph. And therefore, when they get a chance, the 11 brothers decide to kill the 12th one, Joseph. They want to kill him, and then they want to tell their father that he was eaten by animals or whatever. Reuben tries to save him. How? By putting him into a cistern. He says, let's throw him into a cistern. Let's throw him into an empty water tank. Now Reuben had thought that he would take out this boy when the brothers were away and rescue him and take him back to his father. But there's a very touching incident there. Touching, I would say, in the wrong sense of the word. They throw this brother into the cistern, and then the Bible says, and then they sat down to eat. Your brother is down there in the depths. You have put him down there in the cistern. You want to kill him. And then you sit down to eat. That's where I think I come to our topic. That Joseph finally became a big man through God's own plan and providence after having gone through the hard ways of life is a different matter. But the topic that you have given me is about fraternity to the weak, the vulnerable, the marginalized. Mother Teresa, when she was asked what is the root cause of poverty by the reporters, it is said she was very terse and irritated with the reporters who asked her. And she said, of course it is inequality. People are poor because those who have do not want to share. And that, I think, is the real meaning behind the topic which Father Chetan and then Percival asked me to talk about. The weak, the marginalized, the vulnerable. My dear brothers and sisters, this must have been your experiences, but I'd like to share some of my experience during this COVID period. When the sudden lockdown came upon us, we here in Jharkhand in our Ranchi Archdiocese suddenly realized that those who were at the mercy of all the forces possible were the marginalized, the vulnerable, the poor, the daily wage earners, people who get their money the same day, spend it the same day, who hardly have any savings, and even those who had savings became vulnerable. We've just learned from yesterday's reports which say that 23 crore people moved into poverty from middle class during the last lockdown, during this COVID period. And during this COVID period, we were going around trying to help people. I remember a famous instance when a teacher called us right from the jungles, a little village there, where she told us that people have started eating leaves and roots because they don't have food. And at that time, we desperately were trying to reach out to them. And we asked this teacher, how many families are there? And she said about 50. When we actually went there with food provisions, and as we would do, going around distributing material, if we were told there were 50, we would take for 100. When we actually went there, there were more than 150 families that were in desperate condition. But this was the COVID period. It was during the COVID period that we discovered so much of vulnerability. But my dear brothers and sisters, you must be knowing this, those who are living in the cities, those who are living in the villages, how vulnerable the poor are. How vulnerable people who do not form part of the richer fraternity are. And I ask myself, can we really inculcate fraternity into someone? Can we really put some sort of outside force into someone and say, you must serve those poor, you must look after them? Because the real feeling should come from inside our hearts, that compassion. Look at Jesus, what he says, what the Bible says about him. Jesus looked at the masses and his heart was filled with compassion. His heart was filled with compassion because they were like sheep without a shepherd. But his heart was already full of compassion. And that's why wherever he went, he touched the sick, he helped the poor, he fed the hungry. Everything possible Jesus did for the weak and the marginalized. And it is here that we ask ourselves, can we inculcate this fraternity into our hearts? To inculcate that fraternity, we have to have that compassion, that love, that mercy in our hearts. My dear brothers, we and sisters, we are living in a society that is caste-ridden. You think of it. How do we treat our Dalits, our tribals? In everything, there is an inequality. Inequality about which Mother Teresa spoke. The Dalits who cannot get the same privileges, or rather even the simple same equal status as people of the other castes. They are casteless, they are landless, they are just left to themselves. And even what is reserved for them, though we grumble about it, many of us grumble about it, even jobs and others reserved to them, they are not able to occupy because they never got the educational opportunities. You think of our Adivasis, our tribals. There's a certain party in India that never calls them Adivasis, calls them Vanvasis. Simply translated, that means junglis, people living in the jungle, forest people, which means they have no right to a civilization, which means they are people who live in the jungle, and they should remain like that. You go to our deep interior villages of Jharkhand, or for that matter Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, go to any of the North Indian states, into villages, and even the South Indian states, into villages, into deep places where the tribals live. What facilities are there for them to come up? Are we not responsible that they have become vulnerable? Are we not responsible that they have become marginalized? That we have put our tribals marginalized into the margins of the forest. And whenever they come out of the forest and they try to claim their lands, they try to have their rights, we come down upon them with a mighty hand, because their resources, we think, should belong to us. The mining corporates, the industrialists, with hundreds of MOUs being signed to take away their land, with laws being amended. That marginalization, that vulnerability. I sometimes laugh at our youth. They are called aspirational youth. I laugh at them not so much with anger, irritation, but pity. Because what is this aspirational? The aspirational thing that we talk about, and they vote certain parties that say fulfill the aspiration. And what is that aspiration? Have as much money as you have. You get the best of mobiles. You get the best of refrigerators, the best of television. You live a luxurious life. At whose cost? By exploiting those marginalized? By not caring about them? Is that the aspiration that you want to have? And that's the challenging question I put to you, my Catholic young brothers and sisters. What is the aspiration that you have? What do you want to do? Can we look upon our marginalized brothers and sisters with compassion, with love, the way Jesus teaches us? Or are we going to ask that question like Cain asked, am I my brother's keeper? Because this aspirational means I must get my aspiration. I must get my dream. Am I the keeper of all these people? Those who are lost, those who are vulnerable, those who have nothing with them? That's the question Cain asked. Is that the answer? Or are we going to be like the Good Samaritan? And I'm proud to tell you all, my dear brothers and sisters, from my Ranchi experience here during this COVID, it was not the bishops, it was not the adults who took the first lead in helping the poor. Our youth were already on the streets. They did not have passes. They used to go with their motorbikes. Sometimes they were stopped by the police. But they tried to carry relief. And when we saw that they were already out there, the whole Catholic Church of Ranchi came out in full force. The sisters, the fathers, the bishops. We bishops took the lead. And the youth were on our wings all the time. Anytime, day or night, we called them. And you could see that compassion that they were feeling. And therefore, I would not put this topic as inculcating. I would put this drawing out that fraternity. Because, my dear brothers and sisters, there is goodness in you. There is compassion in you. There is love in you. And we have to tap those resources and bring out. Inculcating is putting something from outside. What I would say is, we have to draw that out. Draw that love out. Because remember, all of us, we are made in the likeness and image of God. And that likeness and image of God means that if God is love, we have that image and likeness of love in us. And when that fountain of love, that fountain of compassion is touched, it is then that we can go and give out that love to others. The weak, the marginalized, they are the ones who are given the utmost importance and prominence in the Bible. You'll hear about orphans and widows. Again and again, the prophets tell us, do not oppress the orphans and widows. Why? Because according to the Jewish law, the orphans, if they had not reached a major age, the lands were taken care of by their nearest kinsman, their nearest relative. The widows had no legal rights. The nearest kinsman came and took over the land, the properties. And therefore these were marginalized, these were vulnerable. And very often, as you see in the book of Kings and in other places, they even had to sell their children, the widows, because they could not pay the debts, they could not sustain themselves. And therefore the Bible takes a special care of them. It is that same care that we are called to take of our brothers and sisters. What does Fratelli Tutti tell us? Fratelli Tutti tells us that every person, every human being is a brother and sister. And in a family, you know what a mother does? A mother, without showing much how she is doing it, her attention will always be on the weakest child, the child that is sick. I know this from my own personal experience because I was a weak child. And my mother, I know, had a little special attention to me. I did not like certain types of food. She would quietly make something different for me without letting my brothers and sisters know. It is that compassion, it is that love towards the weak, the vulnerable, that comes from a mother's heart, that gives us, that brings us to this question of fraternity. Because what does the Bible teach us? What does Jesus teach us? See, in Fratelli Tutti, there is a sentence or there is a title which is put, we're living in shadows of darkness, the world in the shadows of darkness. Yes, there is a lot of darkness around us, a lot. But there is a lot of light also in us. And that light is in your hearts. See, we speak about faith, hope and charity. What is our faith? Our faith is in a God who has given us a very simple commandment. Love your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. And the second one, equally important, love your neighbor as yourself. That commandment is the faith that is built in us. Because our faith in God brings us to service to humanity, service to our brothers and sisters. And that faith brings us to bring to people God who is love in concrete actions, in concrete ways, in compassion, in mercy, in love. Because where there is faith, we can bring hope. I told you Pope Francis in this encyclical Fratelli Tutti says that there are shadows of darkness on our world. There is disbelief. There is lack of trust in each other. We don't trust our politicians anymore. We don't trust our police anymore. We don't trust anybody anymore. We don't even trust each other anymore. In this darkness, you, my dear brothers and sisters, and we along with you, we can be beacons of hope. We can bring that light upon to our people, that light of hope, that people see us. See, whenever we used to go with this relief work, which the COVID period has been a moment of great experience, of great learning for us. Whenever we used to go with this relief work, with this relief material, it was not much. 10 kilos of rice, 2 kilos of dal, 1 liter of oil, cooking oil, some pulses, chana, salt. We used to go with this, and you could see the glimmering lights into the eyes of the people. That here is hope for us, that we live for a little longer time, because we did not know how this lockdown was going to end. But that hope, that is to bring joys into our hearts. And my dear brothers and sisters, the more you go out to others, the more you have this fraternity exercise in the world, God will put that much joy into your hearts. God will put that much more energy into your lives. Because charity means giving. Mother Teresa used to say, give till it pains you. Why are we not ready to give to others? Because there is a selfishness in us. A selfishness which does not allow us to give something from ourselves. See, I told you the story of the prodigal son. The elder son was afraid. This younger son, after having lost whatever was his father's and whatever was his share, had now come back into the house. He was afraid that he would lose this part also, that it would be divided again. And the father tells him, you are always with me. Whatever is mine is yours. Which means that it is no longer going to be divided. That seems to have pacified him. But that selfishness, my dear brothers and sisters, that selfishness is very much alive in us. You know, I remember a story just like that. It comes to my mind. I remember a story where there were some 40 very ugly people who were traveling in a bus. And as they were traveling, God appeared to them and said, you make one wish, each of you, one by one, and I will give you that wish. And the first ugly person said, Lord, my wish is that you make me beautiful. The second said the same thing, Lord, make me beautiful, because they were tired of this ugliness. It went 5, 10, 20, 39 of them said, Lord, make me beautiful. The 40th one said, he saw 39 of them had become beautiful. And in his selfishness, he said, Lord, my wish is that all these 39 become ugly again. Whatever the others had earned through their wishes was lost by the selfishness, the ego of one person. The world goes on like this. It depends on us, my dear brothers and sisters, whether we want to be the ones that make the world beautiful, or we are the ones that will make the world ugly. You decide. The choice is yours. Thank you. God bless you.